Hello, everyone. My name is Jason Perez, and you are watching SportsNetUSA.net. For those of you who might be new to this video, what this site usually does is stream live college sports. But obviously, because of the situation of COVID and the pandemic and everything that's going on, there hasn't been that much live sports for Sportsnet USA to stream. So instead, what we've been doing is we've been interviewing coaches around the country and stuff like that, and just finding out about their process, how their team works, things about their upcoming seasons, their past seasons. But what we're doing today is something a little bit different. And so we're bringing you a little bit of a special video here because this isn't taking place in the States. This is part 2 of a series of interviews that I'm doing here in Scotland, in which we are interviewing football managers. And when I say football, it would be what you would back home would call soccer, but from here on out, we're going to keep on calling football. And so I'm going to be interviewing a football manager of a university here in Scotland. In fact, I'm just going to jump right into introducing this person. This person is the football manager of Edinburgh University Association Football Club. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dorian Ogunro. We're going to go Ogunro. Here we go. Dorian, welcome. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well. Good to meet you, mate.
Good to meet you as well. Dorian, obviously, I'm just so excited to have you. You're someone that has been coaching at Edinburgh Uni now for quite some time. I believe you've been there for like 7 years, 8 years now.
Yeah, 8 years, yeah. Well, I've been at the uni for a lot longer. I've been at the uni for nearly 20 years, but I've been coaching the first team for 8 years, yeah.
Well, that's amazing. So why don't we get this conversation started with just you giving us a little bit of information of your background in football and how you got to where you are today.
Younger, played all the time as a kid, school teams, etc., etc. Played amateur, and then probably a level similar to what the team plays now. Joined the uni team when I came to uni. That's nearly 20 years ago when I joined as an undergrad. Played in the first team here. Then I was also coaching under 10s, under 11s, and under 12s at that time, sort of on my days off as such, not that I had many. And then I ended up when I graduated, I ended up taking the under 20s of Edinburgh Uni for about 7-8 years, and then got the first team job. So, yeah.
That's amazing. And were you, where in Scotland were you raised? Were you raised in Edinburgh proper, or?
Born and bred in Edinburgh, yeah.
Oh, very nice.
I've always been in Edinburgh, a few trips elsewhere and sojourns elsewhere, but yeah, pretty much always been in Edinburgh.
Oh, very nice. And as you brought up, is you went through the different levels of Edinburgh Uni, from being a player to being a manager of the under 20s, now being the manager of the first team. So give us a little bit more of a background of how football works at University of Edinburgh.
Well, there's obviously lots of sports clubs at the university, which is fantastic. All the clubs at Edinburgh play in sort of bucks, which is like inter-university competition. So it'd be like your college sports in the States, where you're playing against other universities. But probably the difference between the football team and some of the other sports in uni is that the sort of inter-university competition isn't as high a standard as the competition we play at the weekend. So we play in 2 competitions. We play the inter-university during the week, and then at the weekends we play semi-professional. So it's 2 different types of competitions, both very good in different ways, but it does mean that it's a lot of work and it's quite competitive and challenging for the boys as well.
Do you find as a manager that you tend to, and because you brought up the Bucks League, which is the British universities and colleges sports league, which is what you were talking about before as your weekday league. But then you also brought up the weekend league, which is the Lowlands League. Do you ever find yourself prioritizing Lowlands over Bucks, or do you come at it from a very even standpoint of prioritizing both leagues on an even basis?
I think in terms of performance, we prioritize both on an even level, but because the Lowland League is much harder, we prepare for both as if we're preparing for the Lowland League, because the Lowland League is much harder. So if we prepare for Bucks as we prepare for the Lowland League, then we'll be very prepared, basically. So yeah, in terms of it from a competitive standpoint, doesn't matter what game we're playing, they are equally as important. But naturally, one is harder and more difficult to compete in than another. So the preparation does have to be better for the Lowland League.
So how do you find, what are some challenges that you find within the Lowland League? Whether it is, because I know for example, I'm guessing because you are a university, you aren't able to possibly offer the same financial advantages as a team sort of like Kelty Hearts, who to just name drop a team that might have a little bit more money. So what are some challenges that you find when it comes to that sort of side of the league?
Well, that is the biggest challenge, to be honest, because even at our level, finance determines the makeup of your squad. Obviously in the Lowland League it's 16 teams, usually 16 teams, and now 17 teams because of what happened during COVID and a team getting promoted. But all the teams in the league have some financial ability to compensate their players to varying degrees, obviously, except us, which isn't a problem in terms of us accumulating players, but it is a problem in terms of us being able to get the same standard of players that other teams can get just whenever they need. So if they need to sign Jason Perez, who's such and such a goal scorer, they can just go and sign him as long as they can offer him whatever is the right deal for him. Whereas we can't do that. We also have other restrictions that we are a university team, so we have to play students. Because we play at this level, we have made an accommodation that we're allowed for non-students. They can be graduates or non-graduates, but it's increasingly difficult to attract them because we don't have the finance to attract them, to be blunt. We've got a great setup and we have great off-field support in terms of analysis, psychology, our facilities, the coaching, everything we can provide is top-notch, but we can't provide the zeros, and it does make a difference, to be honest.
That's very fair. And yeah, like as you do, one of the things you brought up there was like the facilities. And for anyone back home that's watching this, Edinburgh University is absolutely beautiful. It's a ginormous campus, and and I'm guessing because of sort of the prestige of the university, it allows you guys to have the facilities to be able to train the way that you might want to train or anything of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. So we play and train at Peffermill, which is a fantastic facility. It accommodates multitudes of outdoor sports. It does have a lot for football, a lot of football pitches, both 3G and grass. We have our own stadium grass pitch, which the university invested quite a lot of money in upgrading to allow us to play it in the Lowland League. So, like I say, structurally, we are supported very well. And our training and playing facilities are very good. And look, we have a lot of things to attract players, and the players that do come, they enjoy it and they invest in the program because they have that support behind them. So yeah, it's very good there.
So one of the things that so as we've talked about now, with just your ability with, yeah, just sort of like the facilities, and we've talked now about just sort of the complications within the league. I think both you and I could say that COVID has been a difficult thing for everyone in just always life. It's caused us to change how we do everything. Have how have you specifically changed, for example, practices and different ways of preparing that maybe you never had to really do before this pandemic hit?
Well, to be honest, our practice hasn't changed that much except for the restriction on numbers. Normally, for example, in pre-season, we can have any numbers we like, and then depending what players come through, we can choose the ones that are ready to play at our level, and then the ones that can't make it can go to other teams. But we had to be more selective because the numbers were restricted due to the SFA rules, etc. So on that side, it's a small challenge. But I would say there was quite a lot of positives. Because we were locked down for so long, we were able to plan ahead. So we were able to plan for practices. We also be able to plan to add additional support to the team. So we've added sports psychology. We've added more in-depth analysis. We've added quite a few things to the team to help support them through the season. So I would say actually, because of the amount of time that everything was locked down, there was more time to do things and think ahead than there probably ever has. It's a very small silver lining, but
so obviously, you're able to find that silver lining within it. However, now if we're to take a look at this current football season for Edinburgh Uni,
yeah,
I feel like maybe both you and I could say that this season hasn't been exactly the season that you were hoping for as a team. Just results wise, it hasn't been going your way.
yeah.
What can you give me some analysis maybe on that as to is it just coming down to, as we kind of talked about earlier, just because of the uni system, you constantly are having this churning of new players and not really being able to hold on to people the way that you would maybe be able to at another club? Or give me a little bit more on that.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. To be honest, our start to the season, despite our results, our performances haven't been that bad. But the main thing is that, to be honest, I anticipated all this, which is, again, we were able to prepare for it. We knew that from last season that we're going to lose 4 of our key players. There were 4 non-students, and they were top players, and they could probably play for most of the teams in the league quite comfortably. And we knew we were going to lose them over the summer. So we knew starting this season that we were going to have one of the youngest teams we've ever had. So we knew there was going to be a transitional period, and we knew that was going to be very tough. And it's turned out to be that way. Probably what's made it a little bit more difficult is the fact that the preseason wasn't at the usual time. Boys, despite keeping fit during COVID and lockdown, weren't really playing football. So we've had more injuries than normal, just like other teams, and some of our key players haven't been available, which has added to, we have a good, decent young squad that if all our best players are available, we could compete a lot better. But due to the same things that have probably affected other teams as well, it's just hit us that little bit harder when we've got that lack of experience that we've had. But like I say, we did anticipate a large amount of this, and we also anticipate things will change sort of second half of the season. So if all goes as we anticipate, then it will improve.
Of course. And then also as a coach, do you feel I guess kind of my first question, this goes back to your early days when you played. What position was it that you played coming up in football?
So I played centre mid, sort of attacking midfield.
Okay.
Most of the time, although sometimes depending on the coach, different. But yeah, attacking midfield most of the time. Okay. I played for the first team at the Union. It was great fun. It's a really good environment. It's a very different environment now to the environment I played in, because we didn't have as much of the off-field support and all the stuff that we've got now, and all the sort of advances that technology allows these days. But one thing that does remain the same is the camaraderie and the atmosphere and the friendships that are developed within the club. So that's probably why I've been there for so long, to be honest. But that still remains, but we do have a lot of other advantages now compared to them.
Awesome. And also, with sort of your upbringing is as a center midfielder, but a little bit more on the attacking side of the midfield, do you find that you you tend to focus a little bit more on the attacking side as a coach, or what do you find? Do you have maybe more of defensive mindset as a manager for your team? What's kind of your thought process for that?
That's actually a really good question. I do have definitely a more attacking mindset, because that's why I'm involved in football. Everybody likes attacking and goals and creativity, and while you can find joy in watching a good defensive performance, the game is about attacking and scoring goals. That's what you want to do. But saying that, we don't just focus on that. We focus on both sides of the game, and especially now where we're facing the challenges we're having to make sure we get the balance right of how we attack and how we defend. But I suppose one of our biggest challenges is that in any league, the most important players are your best defenders and your best attackers, the people who can score goals and the people who can stop goals. And we do have decent defenders, and we've got good attackers, but we don't have very many natural goal scorers, guys who you can count on no matter what, that will put sort of regular chances in the net, and that's where we struggle. So it puts a bit of pressure on us. But yeah, I do focus more. I won't say I focus more on the attacking side. I probably focus on the defensive side from an attacking point of view. I'd rather attack to defend than defend per se, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you so much for saying that. My next question for you falls under just sort of the differences between the American uni sports systems and the Scottish, or just, I guess, the British in general uni sports systems, because Bucks is not just Scottish, it's all of Britain. So like, obviously with like uni football back in the States, teams are maybe playing 20 games a season. And obviously that's a much different thing than what you are probably playing in a season for you folks. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? And then also maybe bring up some other differences that you might have noticed or seen between the two systems.
Well, definitely that's one of them. We play, on average, we play at least 50 games a season, 50 to 65 if we do well. We can play well over 60. That is if playing in Bucks as standard, if we play our league games and just play one round of any cup competitions, then we'll play 16 games, I think. So that can go up to 25, 26, depending on how successful you are in all the cup competitions, or maybe more actually. And then in the Lowland League alone, so this season, the Lowland League has 17 teams. So we've got 32 league games. And then you have the Scottish Cup and the South of Scotland Cup and the Lowland League Cup normally. So again, you can go from 32 to 40, 45 comfortably if you have a couple of rounds in each cup. So yeah, we can comfortably play 50, 60 plus games a season. So that's one of the biggest differences. I suppose the other big difference, again, is the financial investment and probably the support from, not the support from the university per se, but the support from people at the university. So for example, all the sports clubs, including the football club, all have support from within and friends of people who play or coach or whatever. But the support from people outside of the football team for the team isn't huge, where that's a huge difference in the States. And then obviously the other big difference is its positioning in terms of the professional game, because while specifically we do play at a semi-pro level, which is a very high standard over here, obviously in the States, the college game is basically the step before full professional sports. And as a result, the investment into that college level in terms of the players, in terms of the arenas, in terms of the communities that surround the colleges that provide those sports is absolutely massive, as you're well aware. But it's completely different over here in terms of how people relate to that. So that's probably one of the more difficult things to accept when you have, for example, a university with like Edinburgh Uni, which has 20,000 or more students. I think it's more than that. I'm just guessing, but it's definitely upwards of 20,000 students. And yet we get, I don't know, 100 at our games mixed between other, well, more if the opposition bring more fans, but it would be good. That would be one thing I would like from to take from the American college system is the amount of investment off the field, not just into football, to be honest, but into all the sports. I think there's a lot of people participating in all these sports that are putting a lot of good work in that maybe isn't as recognized as it could be.
It is so true. That was one of the things that kind of baffled me when I came over here is, yeah, there's such a culture around university sports in the States. For example, you have schools like the University of Michigan, and if you were to go to an American football game at the University of Michigan, their stadium holds 100,000 people. And they're selling out that stadium on a constant basis. And just like the idea of that much support around a university thing, and then coming out here and it's like you're lucky if more than the parents show up. It's
opposite. I mean, I watch quite a lot of American sports. I do like American football, and I like basketball in particular. So I watch a lot of the college basketball as well as the NBA and stuff as well. But yeah, the college basketball in particular, the arenas are bigger than our professional football stadiums, to be honest. And the amount of fans they get week upon week is actually ridiculous. I mean, I think because of the whole system of sports in the States, it does make sense why that is. But I still feel within the system here, we could do better. Nowhere near that level, but we could do better than what we currently are.
So one of the things that you brought up, or that we were talking about a little bit earlier, was the idea of how just the sheer volume of games that your players would play compared to the university system. How much more of a benefit do you think that is for a young athlete to just be able to get constant reps when it comes to being able to play the sport?
It's a plus and a minus. In our current situation, what it will mean for our better players is that they will play way more games than perhaps I would like, because they would need to keep us at a good level. But under normal circumstances, say for example last season, we would have a more balanced squad. We could mix things up more, which would mean that more players could play, still compete, develop, and get better without overreaching. Because to be honest, if you're playing 50, 60 games a season, plus you're a full-time student, you may well have a part-time job and you have your friends and social life and other things going on. Playing, that's 50 and 60 games plus training 2-3 times a week as well. It's a lot, and it takes a huge toll on you physically and mentally in particular. So ideally, you need a larger squad to manage that. So I think, I think the players themselves, they love it. I have to be honest. Whenever I do try to manage the load, unless it's exam time, that's the only time they agree with it. But whenever else I try to manage the load, give them rest here or there, they don't want any of it. They just want to play. So
that's so funny. One thing you and I briefly talked about before we start recording, that I just wanted to bring up before we shoot into our quick fire round, is just sort of being a Black coach in sports. And obviously there's as we're watching football around the world right now, you're still seeing there's a lot of stuff around there's been a lot of talk about racism taking place and players taking knees at games. And then recently you heard stories about how at a recent Millwall match, fans are booing, stuff like that. As a Black coach in this country, how are you feeling? Are you feeling that there needs to be a better job of representation in the coaching hierarchy? Is there different ways that we could change this sport? Tell me about how you're kind of feeling around
that. We could be here all day, but I'll try. I think in terms of coaching, there could definitely be better representation. That's an absolute given. As we know, the I think in the UK, or at least in England or whatever, the percentage of there's a larger percentage of black footballers than there are the percentage of black people in the population. So relative to the sport, that would necessitate that there should be more black coaches and black managers, which of course there are very few, in line with what we're talking about. So yeah, that could improve, but it's a societal thing, and that's the difficulty. Often with sport, we separate sport because sport does manage itself and promote itself very well, and does take on challenges like racism and other forms of inequality and injustice, and approaches them very well. But it can't do it alone, I don't think. And I think that's perhaps sometimes where it becomes more difficult, because it's fighting a battle that isn't isolated to sport. It's bigger than sport. From a personal point of view, I've obviously faced my challenges here or there, some of them overt, some of them covert, but I'll be no different to another black coach. I think you just have to keep grinding away, to be honest. And now the best thing about all of this is, because, I mean, there's not really a positive out of somebody dying, but because of what happened to George Floyd, and obviously the reaction to it in the States and then subsequently around the world, and then obviously the Black Lives Matter movement, if you want to call it that, or at least the theme, and the response to it, and now a lot more people of all colors thinking about racism and how it impacts society. It's probably helped Black people to speak out more and to be more honest about what's going on, and not to have to suffer injustice and just tolerate things that in the past they may have tolerated, even though they knew it was unacceptable. Because a lot of the time, if you said anything about some of the experiences you had, people would kind of be, nah, that can't be true, or I think you're seeing the wrong thing, or sort of the experiences that you have sort of being dismissed because of the lack of knowledge and understanding. And I think because there is far more education out there, inspired for the wrong reasons, let's be honest about it, it's started to make things easier to speak out about, which is a start. To actually make a change, we've got a long way to go, because again, that's a societal thing. So but the fact that so many people are talking about racism and how it impacts Black and other people of color is a huge step, because normally it's only Black people talking about racism, or Black people complaining about racism, and very rarely white people talking about it, engaging with it, acknowledging it. It's probably one of the biggest frustrations, to be fair, and it's probably been one of the biggest positives, like I say, of everything that's happened in the last while, is that there's more acknowledgement and understanding that racism in its many forms exists, and that has to be a huge step in enabling society as a whole to be able to tackle it. That's the biggest challenge, though. I have to be honest, as I keep saying to my friends, I feel like I've been here a million times when incidents have happened. I mean, I can actually remember, I'm old enough to remember when, I forgot his name now, typical, got killed in LA, not beaten up in LA by
Rodney King.
Rodney King, that's it. I was old enough to remember that and the impact it had on me as a young guy back then. And then there was all the riots and all the news around the world. Obviously, there wasn't internet or social media and all that kind of stuff, but it was still huge. And then you hear about all this change that's going to happen, and then it sort of dies away. And then another incident happens, and it happens again, and everybody gets all excited and angry, and we talk about it. And I always feel like I'm still waiting after the initial reactions to see things put in place that I might initiate change. I have under no illusion that change won't happen till I am long gone. But I feel that with all these sort of awakenings that we have, more can be done, and it may well be happening right now while we're talking, but more can be done to start things to see if they would make changes. And education is part of that, but also applying our education and seeing how we can make visible change is also a huge part of that.
That is very beautifully stated. And thank you so much for talking about that. Yeah, I feel like one thing that I've been noticing a lot lately is just the idea that, and you kind of brought it up, is just like you've been here multiple times. Like this isn't your first time being aware of this. This is something that you've dealt with your entire life. One of the things that I've been seeing a lot lately is just a lot of people, and it's predominantly more white people, are like, oh, cool, yeah, I'm excited to like make a difference. I'm excited to make a change. But then all of a sudden, a couple months go by, it's not in the news cycle anymore. And all of a sudden, it just stops being important to them. And it's just this constant struggle of how do we make this effective change, and how do we make it to stay important. And I do think that because of everything that's taken place recently and stuff like that, that maybe it's finally starting to get a little bit more done, but obviously a little bit more done is still not enough.
Well,
So
I think a huge factor, like I said earlier, is the fact that this is the first time in my lifetime that I can remember so many white people engaging with the topic of racism in any context, just engaging about it, just talking about it, whether they agree with it or whether they disagree with it, whether they think they're racist or whether they don't. This is the first time, for example, that, and I do have lots of white friends, that I've been able to talk to them openly about not just my experiences, but the experience of many Black and people of color. So that's a huge thing, because I have always believed that one of the reasons that it's very hard to tackle racism is it's always come from those who suffer racism. And I feel that to actually tackle it, then white people have to be involved. It has to be a joint thing between us all, rather than Black people and other people of color complaining about racism justifiably and white people not seeing it for right or wrong reasons, and in effect, nothing being done. I think this is the first time that I can consciously say, and whether that makes a difference long term, I have no idea. I would like to hope that will, but I think it's a huge step, like I say, that so many white people have engaged with the topic, where that's never happened in my time. So I think that's a huge step.
perfect. Well, thank you so much once again, Dorian. I now feel like it's so weird for me to now jump into from that topic into my quick fire round. But Dorian, are you ready for the final quick fire round
I am indeed.
of this conversation? Awesome. So as I said to you earlier, this is going to be a little bit more on the silly side. Nothing here. Like I don't think there's really any hard hitting questions in here. So are you ready, Dorian?
Ready to go.
Perfect. Dorian, who is your childhood club that you supported?
Liverpool.
Awesome. Who was your favorite football player?
I have so many, but do you want childhood or
Give
what?
me current. Who's your current favorite?
I have so many players that I like, but the most recent player that really excited me is probably Ronaldinho.
Awesome. If you're to go walking up to the pub, what drink are you ordering?
A juice. I don't drink.
Perfect. Who's your least favorite team?
Definitely Man United.
What player or coach would you most want to have a square go with?
uh, I don't know. There's nobody that angers me that
much. that's more than okay. What kind of roll are you ordering from the shop? Like, what are you getting on your roll?
Oh, cheese and bacon.
Awesome. What was your pump up song when playing football, or what is your pump up song now as a coach?
One of my favorite songs was "Mama's Gonna Knock You Out," LL Cool J.
Love it. Perfect. Spice Girls or Little Mix?
Ooh. mix of Spice Girls.
Scotland obviously recently made the Euros beyond everyone's belief. How far do you think that Scotland is going to make it in the Euro competition?
I think they can get out of the group.
Okay, perfect.
The group, yeah.
What is your favorite movie? Like, what is your favorite movie to like make other people watch?
Probably Jerry Maguire.
Awesome. I love it. Show me the money.
Well, I think he's just one of the best characters ever.
And then last but not least, and we're going to end on this, why should students, say, for example, there are students in the States that are listening to this right now, why should they maybe think about coming to University of Edinburgh to maybe play football instead of maybe staying in the States to play?
That's easy. The setup is fantastic. They'll get lots of support to develop. Obviously, the educational side is just as fantastic, and Edinburgh is a wonderful city. So they will definitely enjoy their football. They'll be challenged technically, physically, and mentally on the football side as far as they want to take it, with opportunities beyond the semi-pro game afterwards as well. But on the educational side, and to be honest, just like I said, the city itself, Edinburgh is a wonderful city, so they would have a good life experience, not just a good football experience, if they were to come and join us.
Well, perfect. Thank you so much, Dorian, for being our guest on this show today. And folks, thank you so much for watching. Once again, my name is Jason Perez, and you've been listening to sportsnetusa.net. Enjoy yourselves. Have a great rest of your day, and stay safe out there, everyone.